All right, hello everyone, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm just gonna give everybody just another couple of seconds to populate in here, and then we will go ahead and get started. All right, welcome everyone to our webinar, Why Employee Cybersecurity Training is Essential. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm just gonna go over a couple of housekeeping items before we jump into our content here. So first off, questions are always encouraged. So there is a questions panel in the bottom right hand of your screen. So feel free to submit those throughout the webinar, and we will have a Q&A portion at the end of our session. And secondly, this is an interactive webinar. There'll be a couple polls that'll pop up on your screen, and you can just go ahead and click your answers directly on the screen. So keep an eye out for those as they come. And finally, a recorded version of this presentation will be emailed to you all. And if you have any colleagues that registered for the webinar but couldn't make it, they will also get a copy. So anybody who registers for the webinar, regardless of if they attend, they get a copy of the slide deck and the recording. And of course, this recording will also be posted to NetGain's website. So my name is Maddie Regis. I am the Marketing Content Coordinator with NetGain Technologies. And I'm going to go ahead and have our speakers introduce themselves. So Braxton, let's start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Maddie. My name is Braxton Molton. I'm a security analyst with NetGain Technologies. And I operate primarily helping to offer governance and oversight for clients and organizations for their cybersecurity program, primarily through the form of VCSO, which is a virtual chief security officer. But what I also help to provide is vulnerability scanning and understanding there, as well as working with clients directly on their own social awareness or social engineering cybersecurity training program or platform.
Nice, thanks so much, Braxton. Joe?
Yeah, sure. Thanks everybody for attending. My name is Joe Mudra. So I'm fairly new to Arctic Wolf. Actually spent the last about 6 years in the business continuity and disaster recovery space. But I honestly got a little sick of being on the back end of this fight and really wanted to get to the forefront of everything. So I spent about 13 years in the data centers around Columbus, Ohio, previous to coming over to the vendor side of things. So I've seen a little bit of the good, the bad, and the ugly of the entire stack, security all the way down. But yeah, really excited to be talking to everybody today, and look forward to working with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise. So let's get into it. I think we're going to start off. Joe's just going to tell us a little bit about Arctic Wolf for those in the audience that may not know that much about them. So take it away,
Yeah,
Joe.
absolutely. Thank you. So we are talking about managed security awareness today, but I wanted to make sure there was some, at least some knowledge of what Arctic Wolf offers as a whole. Managed security awareness is a offering that we do offer, but it's a smaller part of what we do as a company. So I'm going to cover this pretty high level. First, I kind of wanted to talk about the landscape of security as it sits today in businesses. You know, as security people, I would say in general, we've kind of failed over the last 10 years probably at really providing the service to these businesses and keeping everybody safe. If you look at the numbers, you know, there's about 3,000 different security vendors in the space. So it's really confusing out there as to what each of these tools can do, what they can provide. And then there's a really massive overhead for you guys as administrators at not only trying to keep these tools up and running inside your environments, but actually gaining value from the tools, right? So these tools generate a lot of information. They generate a lot of logs. And to really effectively provide a good security solution, we have to have somebody sort of looking at all of that information. Many businesses out there, though, are in this sort of spot where they have a few guys, right? We may have, you know, 3 or 4 security dedicated individuals on a team, and 3 or 4 is probably a lot. You know, usually, and Braxton, you probably see the same thing. Usually when we talk to businesses, it might be one guy, and that one guy might have a couple guys, but yeah, you're shaking your head.
That's a rarity. It's a rarity for me, Joe.
So So we do have this massive gap out there in between what we can provide as a service or what we can provide for security for these businesses, and what we're actually providing. You know, of that 3,000 vendors, about $120 billion in spend happens yearly on security products. However, we continue to see breaches go up, not down. So we're spending more and more money on these products, but breaches continue to go up. So I think it was like 96% increase year over year last year.
Yeah, it's going exponentially, and you're talking about a kind of a key factor that I wanted to highlight is, that's great. Like let's say you get a SIM appliance in, and you've got this device that's now aggregating all these logs. Now you have to staff it. You have to have somebody that's looking at that in real time and has the expertise to understand what it's compiling and where to move forward from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to cover kind of the other offerings in Arctic Wolf really quick, and then we'll jump into security awareness and specifically cover what we're doing in the security awareness area. So I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna talk through this quickly. If you guys have any interest in any of the services that we cover, that I'm covering here, and you want to dig deeper, please contact NetGain and let them know, and we can set up a meeting to really dig in. So I like to start from the top or the bottom on this slide, actually, a little backwards. So Arctic Wolf as a whole is a services company, right? We do have tools as part of our portfolio. However, our goal is not to necessarily provide you another one of those 3,000 tools that you have to manage yourself. Our goal is to get you the security outcomes. So we ingest data from any part of your environment. We're really vendor neutral when we come to what type of data you're going to send us. We're not going to charge on events per second or gigs per day. So we want everything, and then we take that all into our what's really considered an open XDR platform, meaning that it is extended detection and response, but it is an open platform, and that we can ingest logs from any vendor. So sort of stepping up the stack there, after we've ingested those logs, all of our services are delivered through this concierge delivery model. And that really is something that kind of sets us apart. That includes managed security awareness. The concierge security delivery model is a model where, we kind of think AI and the tools are great. Machine learning is great. But at some point in time, you need an actual human to look at this information and make a determination. So our CST, it's called the Concierge Security Team, is 3 individuals that get assigned to an account when you become an Arctic Wolf customer. 2 engineers and 1 analyst from Arctic Wolf. These guys are really the people you're going to be working with. All the services are delivered through them. They're going to have bi-weekly meetings with you. It's really there's no limit on how much you can use these guys. So it's really a great offering in that we're giving you more expertise and giving you that expertise you might be lacking.
They become very familiar with the environment as time goes
100%.
on. It's the whole purpose of the program. So they become, you kind of form somewhat of a relationship with the team. So they know your business needs, and they know what might be correct or incorrect.
Absolutely, and that's a good point, Braxton. Another thing that we do is we actually assign these people based on your technology stack. So if you are looking at our managed detection and response, not quite as crucial when we're talking managed security awareness, and you'll see that when we dig into it, but on the managed detection and response and managed risk, where we're really trying to move forward your security posture, it's critical to have somebody that really understands your environment. So we assign these people based on their expertise previously too. So if you're a Cisco shop, when it comes to firewalls, we'll find you Cisco people that know Cisco when we assign them to your account. So it's not going to be somebody that's learning on the job either. So anyways, I'll cover these fairly quick, the actual services themselves. So the first one's managed detection and response, managed detection and response. This was our first offering as a company, and really what we started out to do. This is 24/7 eyes on glass, looking at your environment, detecting any anomalies or threats, responding to and remediating those anomalies and threats then. So we see some sort of C2 command and control traffic. we're able then to escalate that to CSTs. We'll reach out to you guys and say, hey, we see this C2 traffic. Here is the remediation steps you guys need to take in order to prevent any sort of spread or further damage of this attack. And then as part of that, the two over there that are kind of not in bold, those are a part of managed detection and response. So either cloud detection and response, if you're using IaaS or O365 or any of those SaaS services out there. And then we do provide log search if you guys want to be able to dig in to the logs that we're ingesting and do your own log searching. So that's the MDR piece. The managed risk piece then moves on from just detecting and responding and remediating threats to actually quantifying and qualifying your risks inside the business. So all those vulnerabilities that are known to us but might be existing inside of your environment, we're able to scan, quantify and qualify all those risks. So we're able to say, based on what we see, these are the ones you need to fix first. And our CST team will work with you to put together a plan to get those risks mitigated as you move forward. So we're able to give you a score when you first come on and say, based on industry standards, you're about a 60% hardened. And then we're able to show, as we work with you and move forward, how we're bringing that risk score up and we're hardening out that environment. The cloud piece of that is just again, just an add-on for those cloud applications. And then the last one's managed security awareness. I'm not going to dig into that just yet because we're going to talk about that today. So go ahead and go to the, Braxton, you got anything else to add on this one?
Just kind of repeating myself, the biggest thing that I want to highlight here is Arctic Wolf, the expertise there. We're talking about managed detection and response, and I brought up a SIM. That's going to be all of your log aggregation, but you also talked about managed risk, your vulnerability management program. The big question is, great, we've got all this going on, but who's going to be the one to help understand this? Who's going to be the one to analyze that? And that's where Arctic Wolf can come in.
Yep, 100%. Thank you. And that brings up a good point. One other thing that Arctic Wolf does across our services is if you guys go with two services, let's say, so you want managed detection and response and managed security awareness, Arctic Wolf offers something called a security assurance, meaning that we will insure you for up to $500,000 if you have two solutions. So if you did get hit with ransomware and you had two of our solutions and it managed to get through, you have 500,000 of coverage. And then if you do all three, it's $1 million. So now there are some, little pieces there and different threats, but like ransomware is up there at the top. So if you had all three of our services get hit with ransomware, we would owe you $1 million.
Gosh, I can't even speak to how stringent cyber insurance companies are becoming now because of the increase of ransomware and how much that's increased exponentially. Cyber insurance companies are realizing now that they're losing money. So they're being ever more stringent on what controls you have. So you'll end up getting a multi-page, hundreds of questions questionnaire about, do you have MFA? What do your backups look like? How often do you do it? What's your disaster recovery? Do you have, the list goes on. So rolling with Arctic Wolf on even 2 out of 3 and getting to 500 grand that's a major lift.
Yep. Yeah. And we eat our own dog food here, right? So all of these programs are being used internally as well. So I do all the managed security awareness stuff. I go through that training just like everybody else.
As you should.
Right. Go ahead and jump to the next slide here.
Yeah, and I just do want to mention we've got a managed detection and response webinar on NetGain's website. So if that sparked your interest and you want to learn more, it's actually with Arctic Wolf. So you can go check that out. But let's get into the social awareness of it all and get into our main content here.
Yeah, sure. So, we kind of talked this whole footprint of the attack surface, right? We're not necessarily covering the endpoints or the compute or the cloud with managed awareness. That's all going to get covered with our other offerings. But what managed awareness is covering is the user community education, which unfortunately is the way many hackers and many attackers get in initially, right? Once they're in, they can do a lot. There's a lot of privilege escalation, lateral movement. They start doing from there, but a lot of these breaches start with some sort of user compromise, some user in your environment compromising their info.
End users are the weakest link.
Absolutely. And for all us tech people, I'm sure you guys have joked around in the past too, like, man, our lives would be so much easier if it wasn't for the user community. But then we don't have jobs, right? So, yeah. But yeah, 85% of these breaches are all starting from that user community. So it's really crucial to move the culture of security forward inside of businesses. And I think that's something definitely lacking in everywhere, honestly.
And when you're breached like that, there's no take backs. Your data's out there now, and you're not getting it back. The best you can do is recover internally and go back up into an operating model. But once your data is exfiltrated and exposed, game over. It's done.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's keep rolling with it. So yeah, why don't you guys speak to a little bit about kind of the frequency of training that people typically do and why it's important on this slide.
Yeah, so we're starting to touch base a little bit on why doing the training is important in general. But what's also really important is to make sure that you're doing it routinely and consistently. We're all very, very, very smart people, but I'll be the first one to tell you that if I hear one thing once, I'm not going to be able to recall that the next day. So it's important when you're learning and when you're considering, educating your users, that you do it routinely, that it's something that they're seeing consistently, and that it's smart training. And when you're looking at a phishing email, I could tell you there are, 10 or so different separate red flags that I would look for typically, but your general end user is not going to know that, which is why it's important that you have targeted training. And even from what I'm seeing, organizations are only training about 6% of the time on a monthly basis. And that's really, kind of the sweet spot of what I look for. Some organizations are doing that annually. That's not enough. They're doing that quarterly. That's still not really enough. Monthly is really a really good spot for that. And again, that stat on the right is just kind of an indicator. People forget 80% in less than a month. Back when I was in college, I don't think I could recant any sort of general ed course that I was in, because that's not what I was focused in, right? So when we're doing risk assessments in NetGain, we do security assessments, we do risk assessments. When we're looking at your training program, your training platform as one of your security controls, we are looking at how often you're doing that, and we're looking at evidence of it.
Yeah, and just for educational purposes, so everyone knows, that 80% in less than a month is actually called the Ebbinghaus curve, or Ebbinghaus curve. I used to have a science teacher in high school who used to tell us every single day, you forget 50% of what you learned every day, or every hour, I think it was. Yeah, 50% of what you learned every hour, which we operate on that same principle, and that we do have to pepper in these trainings, right? We can't just do it at onboarding and consider ourselves checking off that box, because
Exactly.
your users are going to forget.
Yeah, and you want to be able to, when you're administrating that and you're running that for your organization, you want to be able to go back and look at, who's performing, who's participating, and what can we do to continue to improve the program. So that's why it's always important that you're making that routine. And it's, as the top title mentioned, the more frequent you do it, the less vulnerable you are, because you're training the weakest link of your cybersecurity program, your end users.
Yeah, and go ahead. We kind of have a perfect storm here, right? So go ahead to the next slide, I think it is. Yeah. So, in these businesses, we sort of have this perfect storm happening, these two cars like flying at each other, right? So the first one, we got security training, right? We're trying to train these people, great.
Mm-hmm.
But we know they're being targeted. They're the ones that these attackers going after first. So we are training them, but then we have this memory recall issue. We're training them at the beginning when they come in and onboard. Maybe once a year we do some sort of security training for them, and it's run by the IT group. Maybe we're even doing phishing emails, but we don't have a great way to track all of that, or really we don't have anybody to help us figure out, hey, our user community really isn't taking this stuff how do we get them moving forward and taking this stuff? So again, that's where our Arctic Wolf comes in, and our concierge team would work closely with you guys on strategies to get your people involved.
Yeah, it's the immovable object versus the unstoppable force. The challenge of, what do I need to do in order to start getting my end users training, all while I know that there are people out there trying to take advantage of my, end users and get my data. So I mean, the graphic is right on the money. So I love that.
Yeah, for sure. It's a fun, kind of funny way to think about it, but it does kind of demonstrate the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
So with that, we're actually going to do a quick poll here related to the frequency of cybersecurity awareness training. So if everybody just wants to click the answers on their screen. Braxton, so we've got this, half, and do you perform cybersecurity awareness training monthly, quarterly, annually, or not at all? What do you think is going to be the typical answer?
I would say it's going to be probably a pretty fair split between annually and not doing it at all.
Interesting.
I was right when I tried to make a educated guess on one of these polls last time. I was right, so I'm hoping I continue my streak.
I think it looks like you are pretty much right on the money, because it looks like we've got a good spread, but yeah, a lot of people are just doing it once a year or not at all. So we'll get into why you've got to do it more frequently and why you've got to do it in general.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, that's shocking to me. Braxton has obviously done one of these polls before, but yeah, that's pretty shocking.
Yeah, I mean, there are a fair amount that we're doing it in quarterly and monthly, which is obviously a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I had a suspicion that probably the biggest percentage of data we would see is maybe once a year, if that, and then very informal.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go over the actual content now of what's involved in security awareness training.
So when you're looking for a security awareness program, something that you want to educate your users, one of the other questions you might ask is, what does that need to encompass? And the pie chart explains this pretty distinctly, but I'll go into each piece. And number one is compliance training. You can go out there, look it up on Google, wherever you need to. There are thousands of industry best practices or guidelines for cybersecurity that you can apply to your organization or your company in general. And that's great. But when we think of, for example, banks, or we think of healthcare, they have HIPAA, healthcare standards and compliance that they have to hold to, and then banks will have like Gramm-Leach-Bliley that they have to have and be compliant to as well. And those compliance standards often have different controls or a different specificity to controls as opposed to your general best practice. So what this will offer is specific targeted education for those industries that will provide basic understanding to your end users on, here's what we do, here's why we do it, and here's what we need to do to protect it due to this compliance standard. And then second piece of that there at the bottom, we've talked about a lot already, is ongoing security education. And just to reprise that again, you have to keep end users in a routine program to make sure that stays top of mind. You forget what you don't kind of repeat or hash over in your head a lot, and making sure that you're able to keep your users participating in a program is going to be beneficial for how your end users conduct business and how they protect the business's data. And then the third piece there, which there's a lot of items that go into social engineering, but the biggest one definitely is phishing. And phishing simulation email is one of the biggest attack vectors we see. So preparing your end users for what to look for, as I mentioned earlier, red flags in emails, making sure that they are conscious of the organization's data when they're looking at their email. Having all three of those pieces in your program is going to set you apart from other businesses that don't have this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, most people are using some sort of email filter to try to thwart phishing attacks.
Mm-hmm.
But none of this stuff, I mean, we've proven it with the numbers. None of this stuff is 100% effective at preventing these attacks.
No.
I think the numbers speak for themselves, to be honest, in that we're not doing a great job of it. And so we really have to start with the user community and the behavior of the user community, trying to change that mindset in that security is not a pain. We want them thanking us, for the user community thanking us for helping educate them on security and helping keep them safe. One of the ways to do that is show them how this is relevant to their current life outside of work too. And a lot of our training touches on that, right? And not just work, but just general practices to be more secure as an individual.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing, Joe, and
Yeah.
and I'm sure we have many business leaders that are sitting in on this webinar, and if you're gonna start enforcing that into the culture, and we need to be thinking about cybersecurity in the business. Where does that decision get made? Well, it gets made from the top down. It gets made from leadership. How do we implement this? So you're thinking about, okay, now I've got this technical control that's going to send out simulated phishing emails to our end users, but before that even happens, there needs to be a leadership decision that says we're going to focus on cybersecurity, and we're going to lend more focus to it in our organization. And where do we go from there? So,
Absolutely. So this is kind of talking about the journey, right? And how you go from starting out with no program into actually having a well-educated and resilient workforce. So the very beginning of that is awareness, right? So we're starting from the bottom top again. If people don't know what they're looking for, they don't know why it's important, then there's not going to be any sort of behavioral or cultural changes. So it's really important to get them educated on what to look for. What are we looking for in phishing emails? What are we, what am I looking for as abnormal behavior, just generally? People sending me an email telling me they've got a bunch of gold that they can, they came into a bunch of money, and all I got to do is send them $1,000, and all of a sudden I'm going to be a millionaire. People are still falling for that stuff.
oh yeah.
So yeah, it's super important. What are you looking for? And why is it important? What can happen if you're not looking for this stuff? So we start out with that base. But then we want to move that into changing people's behaviors. Once they understand what they're looking for, we want to see and we want to be able to track an actual behavioral change. And so we can see that inside of our reporting. One of those big things is a lot of times it's the carrot or the stick, right? Is what I kind of like to say. And it's that we're either trying to incentivize employees to do the training and to change their behavior. Hey, maybe whoever's the best educated security individual at our company who's scoring the best, maybe they get a gift card at the end of the month or something, and those are programs that our CSTs will help you come up with. But we really want to shift them almost to the point where they're self-reporting when something comes up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you see they're reporting mistakes, we want those people to say like, hey, I was on a webinar and I accidentally shared out, another screen that had all our customer list on it or something,
Mm-hmm.
That's an incident that probably needs reported through their security professionals at the company, even if it is benign, right? So it's good to kind of, cultivate that culture of self-reporting too.
Yeah, you want your users actively engaged.
Exactly. And we really want to shift their thinking of this cybersecurity educational piece away from, well, this is just something I got to do for work, to, well, this is something that's important to my work life and my life, and thus I should care about this.
Yeah, and it's not a gotcha thing. It's not a, hey, you clicked an email, we got you, here comes a punishment. No, it's not that. It's okay, this happened. How did it happen? What do we need to do to help prevent that going forward?
Absolutely. Right. And when you get to that point, then you start to see the cultural changes, right? Then we start to see the actual resiliency against cyber attacks internally. And it does kind of become this self-sustaining loop, in that, once people are excited about being educated about their stuff, they're much more willing to participate in the education and use that knowledge moving forward in their work and home life.
And because it is a loop, I'll say it again, the more frequently you do it, the stronger that'll be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, where
Yes,
are we?
I think,
Oh, now we get to dig into the nitty gritties.
yeah, for sure. And I just want to mention, as Joe said, at NetGain, we also eat our own dog food, the phrase that he used. We do social awareness training, and I think it's definitely helped me as an employee and as an individual be able to identify, some random email that's a string of numbers and letters sending me an attachment. I'm like, maybe I should, kind of consider that could be malicious, and even in my personal life too. So it definitely it does work when you do it properly.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so sort of digging into exactly what's included in this service, right? So this gets into the more of the specifics. So I'm going to start at the top here on this one and sort of work my way around. I might jump around a little bit, so I apologize if you're trying to follow me around the circle here. But sort of starting out at the top there, like I said, all of our services are delivered through this concierge security team model, meaning that you have a team of people who are familiar with you, you know who they are, they know who you are, they understand your culture, they understand where you're at from a security awareness perspective, and then they're able to help you move forward on this journey of security awareness. We call our educational materials micro-learning. So one of the things, and I'm sure a lot of people think this, like, man, if I'm going to train my people monthly, I'm going to get a lot of pushback and they got to spend time on this, right? Well, our monthly trainings that we send out are actually micro learning in that they're typically no longer than 2 to 3 minutes. It's a 2 to 3 minute video. Shouldn't take much longer for them, that even if they have to answer a quiz at the end, 5 minutes to get through the totality of it.
And that's helpful because we've talked about making sure you're doing it frequently, but if you're sending out 15-minute modules every month, your users can get what we call calloused to the program, and it has the opposite effect. Instead of engaging your end users and learning them, they're just clicking through a module just to get through it, right? They're not really caring anymore. They just want to get it over with. But 2 to 3 minutes, it helps prevent that, and it again keeps it top of mind.
Absolutely. And one of the other things Arctic Wolf did recently is we actually purchased a company called Habituate out of Hollywood, California. This company actually specializes in kind of shooting that type of content. So it is updated content, right? We do not repeat that content for you guys. So if we've sent out, Sam working from home once, your users aren't going to have to watch Sam working from home again in 6 months. But yeah, they do try to keep it interesting. There's a lot of comic relief in it. I know the Sam working from home one has Sam sitting on the couch with his Xbox controller with a bunch of food and drink sitting on top of his laptop next to him. So there is some tongue in cheek to it, but again, what Braxton said, the fact that we're sending this out on a monthly basis and keeping that top of mind really helps out. The next part is account takeover monitoring. So this is pretty cool in that we're actually scanning the dark web continually. So this is a 24/7 scan, looking for any passwords of your users that are sitting out there, for hackers to actually just grab or buy and then use. So when we see something like that, it's an automatic ticket to the end user saying, these are the passwords, usernames and passwords we found. Please immediately get these reset. And you may want to even go ahead and scan that endpoint, whoever owns that endpoint. So those kind of happen just continually, right? So if we see anything in the dark web, we'll let you know right away.
And if you've never had a dark web scan ran before, you absolutely need to.
The first time you do it, you're going to freak out.
Yeah, you need to be prepared. Make sure you're sitting down because I bet your stuff's already out there.
Yep. Yeah, that's usually the case. First time we turn this on, they're like, "Whoa!" and they're resetting a bunch of passwords. And then as we move forward, right, less and less of those bleed out. The next part is this sort of fully managed, friction-free way that we go about it. there's not really anything on your guys' side to do as far as like selecting the campaign, deciding when it's going to go out, doing all of that administrative work that you would typically have to do with a product like this before it even gets out to your user community. We help take that off your plate, right? So you get the security outcomes of educating your user community, being able to track how you're doing when it comes to that security awareness journey. All of that is sort of included in our offering, right? So you're working with those CSTs, they're working with you to send out these things. There's not really, other than meeting with the CSTs on a bi-weekly basis to see how you guys are doing, there's not a lot of care and feeding that our product needs here.
Yeah, a lot of our clients, or not a lot, but some of our clients have KnowBe4, which provides similar functions, of course. And I mentioned kind of at the beginning of the presentation that I work with them directly on some of their programs, and the legwork that Arctic Wolf is taking away is what I do. So I wish I could just look at Arctic Wolf and say, hey, just handle it for me, because it takes care of a lot of the work and a lot of the legwork that you would have to have somebody in your organization to do. That would have to be one of their duties and responsibilities, and you'd ultimately have to pay them for that.
Absolutely. And then performance analytics, we've kind of talked to this as we've gone through everything. This is all wrapped around a bunch of analytics. So we can tell if you brought up a single user, if you brought up Braxton or myself, you'd be able to see all the trainings he's taken. Has he completed all the trainings? How do we do on all the tests and everything that are going to be sent out? Did any of the phishing attempts get clicked on, or were they reported? That type of thing. So we're going to do those analytics to make sure and to validate for you guys that you're actually getting value out of the solution. So it's quite nice. I mean, not necessarily on the managed awareness side of things, but on the managed detection and response and managed risk, sometimes I've heard from other customers, we have this product, but I haven't heard from our people in a year. And it's kind of like, well, if you haven't heard from them in a year, like what are they actually doing for you? Obviously, you're not going to go a full year without anything going on inside your environment that could be malicious. There's just no way. So it's interesting, and that we do want to track that moving forward, so we can prove to you that we're improving your security education at your business. And then we're doing the automated. I'm sorry, Braxton. Go ahead.
Well, just real quick. Great that you're doing it, but is it effective? Is basically the bottom line there. So performance analytics.
Yep. And then the automated phishing solutions, right? So we've talked to that as well, right? As part of this, we're sending out automated phishing solutions. I believe it's on a monthly basis is what the phishing solution, or the phishing simulations go out as. And then if they do click on something, we'll sort of educate them on it. Now there is a new sort of offering here. So one of the requests we got a lot was that, hey, it's great that you guys have all this, but since you send it out on your own, we don't have a way when people get onboarded to like do any sort of training with them until they get enrolled in the program. And maybe they've missed some of the previous stuff and they wanted ways to be able to do that. So there is an offering now called Managed Security Awareness Plus. And the Managed Security Awareness Plus gets you access to very industry-specific content packs. So, for example, if you're healthcare and we want all of this stuff to be curated for specific healthcare, you could get a pack that's just healthcare. The other piece is role-based content. So, if you only wanted, hey, I don't need all my line workers getting all of these, but I do want them to take it sometimes. We could set it up so, hey, it's only going to these people, X amount of times. I wouldn't recommend that. I'd recommend educating them as much as you can, but there are requests for that type of thing. And then the compliance content pack, you can actually purchase outside of Wolf. You do have to be enrolled in managed security awareness, but you can purchase a content pack which has all our content in it. So you can kind of go back a little bit to the sort of that KnowBe4 if you want. But really our friction-free and fully managed offering, that takes a lot of work off your guys' plates. But because there are some incidences where people need this, we've added that on as well.
And if you're, quick callback to that pie chart we were looking at and what encompasses a well-rounded security awareness program, You're looking at it right here, Managed Security Awareness Plus. That's going to drive your compliance standards and your trainings there. That's what we're looking for.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
No, go ahead.
Just going to hit on one kind of impactful statistic from Gartner, which is by 2023, organizations that are implementing specific and measurable. So again, that goes back to the performance analytics thing. Security awareness programs are going to experience 75% fewer account takeover attacks. So that's a pretty big difference just with this one, kind of simple action that you can take to educate your employees about phishing attempts and different sort of ways that hackers could try to get in. So with that, I just kind of want to get some closing thoughts. So Braxton, I'll throw it over to you first.
Yeah, I said a little bit in the beginning of this webinar that once your data's out there, it's game over and it's done with. And while that's kind of true, there's still some things you can do. And we talked about, this will provide dark web scanning so that you can be aware of how much of your data is out there, whose credentials are out there in the dark web that to be bought, sold, or it's just posted for free game, which that happens too.
Yep.
And if you don't have this, if you don't have dark web scanning, you never had one done before, and you don't know that your credentials are out there, then you're just flying blind, and you don't have anything to give you a sense of urgency that, hey, these credentials are out here and you need to reset your passwords. Because if you're just running with the same password, then everyone's just going to be able to run those credentials and try and break in. But if you have Arctic Wolf Security Awareness Program providing you up-to-date monthly scans of new information that gets out there, of your information that gets posted out there, then you can respond to it and act accordingly. And then hopefully with the consistent training program and all of that, you start to see less and less of your credentials and data that gets exfiltrated and put out there.
Yeah, Joe?
Yeah. So I mean, I just gonna reiterate, that a training program and an educational program for your end users is it should be, as you think about your security, should be a core part, and it should be a program, a part of your security initiatives, right? Even if it's not with Arctic Wolf, please get something in place, because this is a giant gap, and it absolutely is the way that hackers initially and attackers initially get into environments. Firewall rules and all those other tools we put in place are great, but our end users are the weakest link. So making sure that we educate them is crucial, is critical. One thing I didn't cover and I did want to just really quickly go over it, is the, we talk about the friction-free piece. Onboarding is sort of the same way for us too, right? It doesn't take a lot to get set up with managed awareness. It's really, the first session, it probably about 15 to 20 minutes with our onboarding team, honestly. It's not too much. And then they'll introduce you to your concierge security team. From there, we basically start kicking off the micro learnings and the phishing attempts, and then you would work with that CST team moving forward. So it's very easy to get set up and get going with Arctic Wolf inside your guys' accounts, or inside your inside your business.
Yeah. So there's no reason not to do it if you're considering it. Okay, and everybody can start submitting any questions that they have not so far, because we're going to get into the Q&A in just a second here. But Joe just wanted to explain there's kind of an overview and a demo of the Managed Security Awareness Program. So yeah. Joe, wanted to speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, so a lot of times I get questions on, okay, well, I want to see some of the content. You said it's cool and it's hip, but let me see it. So this is a way you guys can go out there and you can actually see the content that your end users would be viewing. It also steps you through a little bit of what that onboarding looks like, what the journey with our CST team looks like, some overview of the reporting and such, and the dashboard that you would have access to as well. So it is, yeah, I mean, it's quite nice. If you guys are interested, you can go out there, sign up and step through it and get a little bit more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. And Megan Reed just sent the link in the chat to everyone. So if you want to go ahead and click on it right now, you can absolutely do that. But thanks so much, guys, for all of that awesome information. Let's get into some of these questions now. And while we are starting to get into questions, I am going to throw up one more quick poll, which is really just, you know, how can NetGain help you, whether it's with security or another part of your technology. So just feel free to click the answers on your screen for that. Yeah, so this is a good first one to start with. So I think I'll throw this one to you, Joe. So if a person falls for one of those simulated phishing attempts that you talk about, you said, you know, like there's some sort of follow-up. So kind of this person wants to know what the follow-up actually entails.
Right. So, I mean, it doesn't do a lot of good if we send somebody a phishing attack and then like a note, haha, you got caught. If someone should click on one of these phishing attempts in their emails, right, they automatically get redirected to a page that steps them through that specific email and tells them specifically what they should have been looking for on that email in order to make sure that it was not, or to make sure that it was a valid email that they should have received. So it's very relevant to, you know, it's not generic, it's very relevant to whatever phishing attack was sent out. And then it gets noted inside of our system. So we know if we see somebody who's continually clicking on phishing attacks, we know they probably need some sort of education outside of what we're sending. So, you know, they might need a support desk guy to stop by their desk and say, hey, you know, we notice you keep clicking on this. We're going to do a sidebar educational session for you guys that keep clicking on these. You know, different strategies. And again, our CSTs will work with you guys to come up with ideas. You know, they're working with lots of businesses, so they've seen what's worked out in the businesses and the different cultures to actually get these people, you know, embracing a culture of security.
I love that because, you know, often or not, you know, someone will fail a phishing test, and then maybe there will be some sort of splash screen that'll say, kind of like a, haha, got you. This was a simulated phishing test, and then the training comes after. But with that model, the training happens right then.
And it's actually a click through too. So let's say the first thing they'll do is make you click on the email address. You should have clicked here and looked at the email address, and it displays the email address, right? So that piece of it, if you do get hit, there are some, like, you know, they might think of it like, oh, this is kind of a pain, but it's supposed to be a pain at that point. Hey, you got hit a little bit, so you do need a little bit of additional education.
You got to take your medicine at some point.
Exactly. No, good question.
Absolutely. I think we've got another one here, and I'll throw this to Braxton first, but I think both of you, I'm sure, have an answer, which is how often do you see these kind of like phishing attacks and social engineering attacks in your day-to-day lives in security?
Every day, all the time.
Yeah.
I can't give you a number. Reaching towards infinity. If you're a math person, so.
What I thought, I was looking through some stuff, and I thought it was during the pandemic, Microsoft reported that there were 30,000 daily attacks. Yeah, there it is. Yep, 30,000 daily attacks during the pandemic. So yes, this is happening all over the place, all the time.
It's only gonna happen more, unfortunately. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think personally, in my personal life, I've actually seen more attempts. I had one that, thankfully, because I work for an IT company and I'm educated on it, I was able to identify, but it looked exactly like my bank information. So, you know, that's a pretty heavy hitter right there. And I've had someone try to get information out of me through Facebook Messenger. So there's just all kinds of avenues that they're taking right now, both personally and professionally. So I think especially since the pandemic started, it seems like it's really ramping up more and more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys, if everybody is into comedy, but there's a guy named Ronnie, I think it's Chang is his last name, and he does a bit on trying to talk to his mom about kind of security and the different different things. Like his mom sets up a YouTube account with her own name and then starts posting bad stuff online, and he's trying to tell her how to delete a YouTube comment. It's spot on and hilarious, and unfortunately, sometimes those are the end users that we're trying to educate inside of the user community.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody can learn, and I think the Arctic Wolf platform is definitely an awesome way to do that. So again, if you have any interest in that, you can go ahead and reach out to us at the contact information on the screen. Same with the rest of Arctic Wolf's offerings, or any other security needs that you have, or just IT in general. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us at the information below. I think that is all we have for questions. So we can go ahead and wrap up here. But gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your expertise today. And just for everyone who's attending today, there is going to be a survey at the end of after I close out the webinar. So we just greatly appreciate any feedback that you have. Just helps us, keep improving and keep changing these webinars so that you're getting what you want out of them. And again, we will be sending a recording of this presentation shortly. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you all.
And big thanks to NetGain for getting this organized, and Braxton, thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Arctic Wolf.
Bye, everyone.